One really cool thing about minimalism is that no matter who you are, no matter how wealthy you are, what your background is, minimalism is a strategy that you can inject into your life that can make life better, that can allow you to enjoy life more, focus on experiences and relationships and what you care about as opposed to the little things in your day. And while maybe the way it actually applies in your life might look different for different people, ultimately the idea of putting less emphasis on stuff and more emphasis on life and decluttering the excess can really help almost anybody live a more meaningful, satisfied life. So my point is the payoff can be huge for anyone who wants to try it out. And I think there are 5 simple concepts that I want to share with you today that can help you get there, get to where you want to be, living in a more decluttered, worry-free life. These are ideas that have helped me streamline and minimize and focus on what's important. The first simple concept that I try to remind myself is that one single object is not likely to change your life. What's more likely to change your life are relationships, experiences, accomplishments. Those are the things that make up the parts of life that are meaningful to us, that get us deeply excited in that real way. No one single object, at least not in most cases, is really going to change the entire trajectory of your life. It's funny how something like getting a new pair of shoes can make you feel like, wow, I'm now this professional, accomplished person just because I have the shoes that match that identity. And it makes us feel like we can change ourselves. It makes us feel like we can take on a new role or a new self. But ultimately, those belongings are not the things that are going to make us that new version of ourselves. And yeah, I know sometimes we need physical tools to get things done, but sometimes more than one version or option of that item could work. For example, if you want to start a YouTube channel, you can just start shooting on a phone. You don't even need to necessarily buy a whole camera for it. Or you could even rent the equipment if you want to try out a real camera. In general, no one object is going to be the thing that allows you to succeed at something. It's your effort, it's your focus, it's your fortitude. It's learning and getting skilled at something and making connections in a field or building friendships that are going to impact your life more than having the right tools to get something done. It's about who you are and what you as a person bring to the table. And sometimes reminding myself of that helps me step away from maybe purchasing that extra piece of gear that I really don't need. A second concept that I've been telling myself lately that's helped me not overshop is you don't need everything that's nice. And I know it's such a simple idea and one that is obvious. Obviously, you can't have everything that's nice. But sometimes with social media and how easy it is to purchase things online with a click of a button, sometimes it feels like we can achieve that we can get every single cardigan, sweater, or table or chair that we get excited about that we see online because it's so easy to just press click and have it sent to your home. Just because I like it or I'm attracted to it or I think it's nice does not mean I need to have it in my life. That's just not true. That feeling is actually a wish or a desire. It's not a need. And also, ultimately, if I were to buy everything I liked, I just wouldn't be able to handle all the stuff in my home. So that's something I remind myself when I'm tempted to buy something. A third concept I try to remind myself of, or in this case, a question I ask myself is, in an ideal world, what would my space look like? Sometimes in a store at like Target or Home Goods, I'll see some cute trinkety thing that I think I could add to a shelf, and so I'm tempted to buy it. But then if I actually think about it in my space and in the context of my overall look of my space, I realize that it just wouldn't fit in and it would actually end up adding to more chaos and take away from the relaxed vibe of my space. A fourth concept I remind myself of is that just because something is expensive does not mean it's better. Just because it's pricey, just because someone decided this was more valuable, that was ultimately just someone's opinion, and that does not mean that it's actually going to be more valuable to you in the context of your life. So often you can buy something more affordably or maybe even with a less fancy material that you'll end up using and wearing over and over again way more. I think about some sweaters that I've bought at Target that have lasted me weirdly really long, like years and years, that I just love, are good go-tos, and there's no problem with them. And yes, sometimes it's nice to have better quality or to think about where you're sourcing, what you're buying. Like, it's good to be intentional with where you're putting your money and the types of companies that you're sort of supporting with your business. But I think so often we just assume that something is better because it is more expensive, when sometimes it's not. And you can find something even made out of the same material elsewhere for less money because it's not a certain brand name or whatever. A fifth concept is just because something is more complicated doesn't mean it's better. I think a metaphor for this one is when you make, say, a pasta or a salad. At least for me, sometimes I get carried away with the ingredients. I find this ingredient and that ingredient, and I just keep tossing things into the pot or the pan until it gets really complex and convoluted, and it ends up being a mishmash of like too many flavors, and you even miss some of the flavors, and you're almost kind of wasting some of the ingredients because you can't even taste some of them. Anyway, sometimes the simpler version of that pasta or that salad is just as good, just as delicious, but it might be less expensive, less effort, and it might just be better. Just remembering that simplicity sometimes feels better, it's more comfortable, it's more inviting, whether that's in how you stylize your home, or whether that's how you choose your commitments in your life, or how you spend your time, what you say yes to. Sometimes being a little bit more simple is just better. Now, I know some of these concepts are pretty straightforward. Some of them are ones we already know just inherently by being human and moving around the world. But I think sometimes we forget them and we get caught up in the day-to-day trying to impress other people, trying to fit in, trying to find a place in the world. Like, so much of why we buy stuff and why we overconsume and overcomplicate things is based in that desire to connect and to be a part of a community or a society. And I think that's very human and understandable. But I think it's so important to remember what our priorities are and how we want to spend our time and the type of lifestyle we actually want to have, and not get caught up in these little details, in these little objects, in these little things that in the short term make us feel good, but in the long term overcomplicate our lives and make life messier. So I guess take this as a reminder to scour your life, to pay attention to your belongings, but also how you spend your time, what your priorities are, and try to crystallize keeping what's good and what's important to you and just letting go of the rest. That's most of what I've got for you today, but thank you so much for spending this little bit of time with me, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.